we have Lawrance here, who is the director of Alongside Africa, and I wanted to ask him, first of all, a little bit about his background, his education and his interest in Africa.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just like to echo Sandra's warm welcome and thank you so much for everyone for coming. My background, I'm actually a local lad from around here. I was brought up in Capel from the time I was 2 years old. And then I went off overseas to Africa when in my early 20s. I went out there for a year. I thought maximum 2 years, just for a bit of variety. And I came back 18 years later with a wife and 2 children. And Africa had got under my skin and I'd got the bug. So we came back about 12 years ago.
Okay. So when did you actually set up your charity Alongside Africa?
That was a bit of a journey as well. We were inspired to go out to Uganda through a talk given by a Ugandan bishop who was over here, I suppose, about 8 years ago, Bishop Kayeye. And we got to know him very well. And initially, our daughter was going to go out to do a gap year. And she was thinking of going to somewhere like Tanzania with one of these organisations that does these things for gap years. And we all went to this talk with the bishop. And at the end of it, we all independently, it's my wife and daughter and I, all thought we need to do some work out there. Don't ask me how or why, but we did. So the daughter decided she was going to go out there and have her gap year in Uganda.
So, I mean, are you saying that it was purely the chance that the bishop came from Uganda that made you select Uganda?
Yeah, pretty much so. Daughter went out there. Monica, my wife, said, "You're not going on your own, I'll go with you." We thought, well, you might as well send the son as well, who was a bit younger at the time. And I said, "I'll support you from here and make sure you're safe and looked after." And they went out there. Our daughter absolutely hated it. But Monica loved it and came back with wonderful stories of a lovely place with wonderful projects being run out there. I went out the following year and I also fell in love with the place. We've been going every year since then. And we decided that we needed to expand our work out there. So 5 years or so, over 5 years ago now, a group of us went out on a visit, as we do in our every year, and decided to set up our own organisation. And that's where Alongside Africa was born.
Right. So what is the actual geographical extent of the charity? Is it countryside-based or town-based? Do you have a focus?
It's both. We run a number of projects. Initially, we started out actually in the town itself. I mean, the town where we operate is very rural. It's far smaller than Folkestone. And we started off with sponsoring some of the children there who were on the streets, who should have been in school, who had no way of getting into school. And then we did some more work out in the country areas, probably about 30 kilometres outside of the town. Very, very difficult to get to places, very exciting places and with wonderful people. And then more recently, we've started our Street Children programme, which is back into town again. So we operate in town, out in the country. At the moment, all within that one district, but there's nothing we'd like more than to expand enough and move far outside there.
Yeah, so you mentioned the work. So apart from the Street Children, which we can perceive immediately,
Yep.
What sort of work were you also doing?
Okay, we've got 4 programmes that we run. The Street Children, as we've mentioned, which is our newest and in some ways very dear to our hearts, because we're dealing with wonderful children all day long. But we also run a successful microfinance programme, which we're very happy with, very proud of. That's been running about 2.5 years now. And unusually for Africa, we've got a 100% success rate in terms of repayments. So all the money that was initially put into that program is still there and still being recycled. That's very much our focus out of town. We're very much around providing opportunities rather than aid for people out there, and providing these small loans, mainly to women's groups, a lot of AIDS widows out there who have no way of earning an income, no way of raising any capital to do any agriculture or anything along those lines. If they go to a bank, they have no assets to secure loans, so they would be charged an absolute fortune to get loans, and we provide loans completely unsecured at very, very low interest rates, which helps to pay the administration fees, that's all. And it's growing, and it's wonderful. And then the fourth one, which you may have seen as you came in, and if not, please have a look, is our craft program. And the craft program, we've been running again from the start. This is again helping the women's groups, the ladies out there who are very skilled in their own ways, but they have no market for their products that they can produce because the whole area is so poor. So we asked them how we could help them, and they said, help us to get a market for our products. So we buy those products from them at the going rate. We bring them over here, we sell them to good folk like yourselves, and then we use that money to buy more and to expand the scheme. So again, it's providing opportunities for those women to earn an income for themselves.
Right. So how do you go about fundraising in the UK?
Fundraising in the UK is through events such as this evening. Thank you all so much for that, and I can't say a thank you enough, as I will later as well, to ARRC for being so generous to put on an evening like this for us. We also do quite a bit of marketing. We're just starting a new marketing campaign, which hopefully any Facebookers will start to see, and people who use Google will start to see soon appearing, which will help to raise funds for running the Street Children program. That's why there's various forms on the tables out there. We try to get grant income through various organisations like the Rotary Club are being very generous and very helpful to us. We do talks out in different places. Whoever wants us to come out and do a talk at church events, community events. We have stalls for the craft in summer fairs. You name it, we will do it wherever we can.
Have you any idea how many people have actually benefited from your charity? Have you got any way of knowing what extent, who you've reached?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And we do actually keep some stats on that, believe it or not. I did these stats around a year, 18 months ago. It's a difficult equation because there's a great multiplier.
Yes.
So whilst we may help 20 women in a group who, with one of our loans, those 20 women have a family of 4 or 5 people each that will then also benefit. So there's a lot of multiplier effects out there. The last calculations we did on this recently, just looking at immediate people who we've helped and one place removed, was around 2,000. And that's probably 2,000 people that are currently relying on us for all that they need to do.
Right. Can you just give us a little outline about the different aspects of the charity which are up here?
Yeah. As I said, the microfinance program provides loans currently up to £250 a go. Very interesting in that the women who take them, they've all been able to repay. They use the £250 to buy seed potatoes, to rent land, to bring in insecticides so that they can grow a crop of potatoes. I was there in June, July last year. We went out for a long walk through the fields, as one does after a long drive and a long hot day, to look at another field of potatoes. And it was a lovely field of potatoes, I must say. And we spoke to the women's group there, who were really very proud of this, and said, look at our field of potatoes. And we said, oh, wonderful. No, we're so glad that you've been able to use our loan for this. And they said, no. We used your loan last year to bring in our first crop. From that crop, we paid you back and paid off the interest. We managed to pay our school fees, and we've invested the money now for our next year's crop. So that's having, again, a multiplier effect. And, of course, we got all the money back, and it's gone out again. So that's the microfinance, and that's one that we desperately need to grow. And there's a lot of demand, well, firstly for these relatively small loans, but there's a growing demand from the groups who have had the money already to say, can we have much bigger loans to start a much more substantial business, which we would very much like to do as soon as we find the funding for it and they're ready. We're flying out to Uganda in 2 weeks' time, and that will be one of the focuses of this trip, is to agree the process and the rules and the way that we would be able to manage much greater loans. We provide training anyway around the loans for the women to know how to manage savings, how to make sure that you've got the money when you need it to pay back, how to make sure your scheme is going to be cost effective for you. We've got to take that to a much higher level if we're going to be giving loans of £500, £1,000. They've got to start becoming entrepreneurs. So that will be a lot of our work on that one.
Can I ask you what sort of bureaucratic problems you have in running a charity in Britain?
Bureaucratic, probably not too many. I must admit, we're lucky in a way because we are small. We don't hit all of the regulation that the bigger charities would hit, and we are also able to account a lot more closely for all the money that we are lucky enough to receive. Our problems in this country are much more around getting the people, getting the help, strengthening the board, getting the skills on board that we need. I think the regulation that is in place that manages or controls our finances, controls the work that we do, controls the rules around what we can use money for, we actually welcome, because it keeps us on the straight and narrow, and we think they are all good rules.
Can I bring you back to the street children? I mean, have you got any sort of ambitions like Dudamel to create an orchestra?
An orchestra, no, but we have got a football team up and running, which we're very proud of. And that was actually supported here locally in Folkestone by the Nailbox pub up near Folkestone West, and also by some of the guys at Invicta Football Club, who gave us some strip that we've taken out there. What we found was these children, they all have a terrible background. They all have a tragic story. And they all have coping mechanisms. People at ARRCC would understand very much around that type of thing here. And one of their escapes, one of the few escapes that they can afford, is glue sniffing. So they get addicted to glue, the sort of glue that you can get to fix your shoes. It's actually difficult to get hold of in this country now because it's toxic.
Yes.
But over there's no such restrictions, and so the kids get very high on this stuff. When we ask them why, because it causes all sorts of brain damage, physical damage, their answer is it keeps us warm at night. And it's the only thing that keeps them warm, because they've got nowhere to live. They're living in drains and street corners. So we thought, how on earth are we going to get them off of the addiction to glue? and the idea came up that you can't sniff glue and play football at the same time. Apart from the logistical problems there, obviously it's a problem on the lungs, that their fitness goes down, and they're all football mad. So the thought then of getting a football team together, sending them a nice smart kit from the UK so they can all be very proud and feel like a team. We sent out money for boots, so they're funding on their boots. And we got them training every day. The plan was to get them training. How do you get a bunch of street children training every day? Not simple, not straightforward, but there was one of the children there, older than the rest. His name is Justice, and he's around 16 years old, totally literate, never been to school, would love to go to school. And one of the people in our party last year said that they'd like to sponsor him to get an education. Lovely idea, but 16 years old, how are you going to start? He would need to go into P1 in primary school, wouldn't work. So we had to think, and he loved football, and the children looked up to him as one of the more respected elders in the group. So we said, come off the street, and instead of sponsoring you to go to school, we'll use that money to pay you a salary, and we now have a full-time football coach. And Justice now takes all the kids out every single day to go and train. The local authorities have given us use of the local municipal football club, and they're getting off their addictions to the glue. Justice has got a job. So no orchestra yet. If anybody wants to go out and start an orchestra, we can organise it, won't be a problem. But we've got a football team.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Can I see whether there are any questions from people in the audience here? Yes?
Well, first of all, I'd like to compliment you and your team on the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Because it needs people like yourselves and people like Art to make a difference to people's lives. What is your day job?
My day job? I work for charities.
Right.
Believe it or not. No, I'm a business analyst and a project manager. So my day job is helping particularly small charities, either in the UK or around the world. I was this year in Kazakhstan and Georgia, implementing computer systems for charities to help them manage their fundraising, their supporter databases, their communications with their supporters, almost anything that they want. I'm working next week with a charity that runs the Fairford Air Show out in Swindon. I do work with the Red Crescent and Red Cross societies. Yesterday I was with a very small charity in London that provides training for disadvantaged children to go on the stage. So it's an absolutely wonderful job that I have the opportunity to work with charities all the time. And then in my spare time, what little there is,
You start your own.
I run my own, yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't run my own. I happen to be the figurehead at the top. There's another group of very dedicated people out there who's doing most of the hard work.
So what are your admin costs then?
Here, last year, I think they must have been somewhere around 3-4%, something like that. And I think the vast majority of that last year was on one airfare to Uganda. Most of the time we will pay our own fares out to
My next
Uganda.
question, who pays for the airfare? You just answered that.
Generally speaking, we pay our own, but where there is a very specific, dare I say, business
Yes.
need for the charity for somebody to be there, and that's going to become more common as we grow, then I think we've now budgeted for at least one trip a year to come out of the admin fees. That's the vast majority of them. We don't have an office. All of our staff are volunteers. So we have, I think we have a subscription on some software for our accounting to make sure the accounting is straight. We have a little bit of marketing cost, not much. Most of the sundry expenses we have, the trustees tend to pay out of their own pockets. So
Right,
it's a
okay.
very low
Yeah.
figure.
Because that's one of the things that you hear all the time about charities is some of the people get paid mega salaries. So
Yes.
I didn't think you were going to be,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to ask the question.
No, and I'm very glad you did.
For other people in the room.
Yeah, very much,
The
yeah.
last question I have, if I may,
Please.
is what skills are you looking for on your board then, or people to assist you?
We are looking for a range of skills because we're a very small board and we need more. The key thing that we're looking for at the moment is we're an organisation who's got a lot of good ideas and a lot of ambition, and we are being given lots of wonderful ideas all the time by lots of people. What we're looking for is people who can say, now here's a good idea that we can discuss with you, and we will do it. Or we have the, so it's a much more participatory type of board. So we're looking for a CEO. So somebody who can run the operations, all the operations here in the UK and grow them. My role, believe it or not, is meant to be with my wife looking after the operations in Uganda, which are much more extensive.
Right.
But at the moment, I tend to be doing a lot of the work here. So I'm looking for a group of people who can actually be committed, put in time, and actually start doing the work around what should the policy be on our fundraising and how are we going to get people to find outlets for the craft so that we're not reliant on summer fairs and people who can take this whole thing to the next level from where it is at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, a couple back there.
I can't see.
Yeah.
In the future, would you provide accommodation for these three children?
Another very good question. Yes, at the moment we have what we call a drop-in centre, which is in the middle of Kibale town where we operate, and that is what it says. It's a drop-in centre for the day. So the children come in around 9 o'clock in the morning. They go home. They go back out on the streets 4:30, 5 o'clock, and we have to hope and pray that they will come back the next day. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they come back battered, and sometimes they come back intoxicated. Sometimes they don't come back, and it's a problem. The next phase of our program is to establish what we call a halfway house. And this will be a residential centre outside of town, a few kilometres away from town, where the children who have shown commitment and promise and the ability to shown that it would be possible to get them, if you want, rehabilitated, we would be able to take them out to this halfway house. They would have accommodation there, particularly for the older children. We'll be able to provide vocational training for them. The younger children would be able to get just basics of life skills training, their responsibilities in life, their rights, human rights in life, their rights as children, to just prepare them to go back into, if you want, the normal world. So that's, and that really is a large focus of the fundraising for this evening. The money from this evening will go towards funding that halfway house, because it's an expensive exercise to set up and an expensive exercise to run on an ongoing basis. But that's the plan, and we desperately need to do that for them.
Yeah, thank you. What's another question?
Yeah, apologies, I arrived a little bit late, so you may have explained this already, but I was just interested in terms of your operation and logistics, in the sense that in Uganda, where you're operating, and because obviously it's a big country, and and I've been to Uganda backpacking, so I know it quite well.
Okay. Logistically, we operate in a very small town in the far southwest of the country, close to the Rwanda DRC borders, in a town called Kibale. We operate from there out into the surrounding countryside area, mainly within the Kibale district. We're registered in Uganda as what's called a community-based organisation, which means that we are licensed to operate within the Kibale district. And as we grow and expand, So we would then take our status as a non-governmental organisation so we can operate countrywide. We have a full-time staff of about 6, I think, now that we have, mainly on Amasico. So we've got a cook and a cleaner there. We've got a security guard. We've got a manager there who runs there. We've got a director for the whole organisation, and then a few part-time staff and volunteers as well. Going back to the earlier question of salaries, that's the only salaries that are paid for the guys out there, and that gives them an opportunity for a living as well.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that's our interview over, so thank you very much for all that information.
Thank you.
I hope your fundraising this evening will also be very fruitful, and I wish you all the best with the charity, and thank you very much for coming along and telling us about it.
Thank you very much.